Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll gain confidence, clarity, and a competitive edge in a crowded marketplace so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I've got some big accessibility news to share with you. They both involve overlay companies. But before I get into that, I want to first quickly explain what an overlay even is. A web accessibility overlay, it's supposed to detect and fix accessibility issues on a website. And it gets installed on a website with a few lines of JavaScript. Now, it's called an overlay because it doesn't actually modify the site's code. It actually works at the browser level. Okay, and there are a lot of limitations to these overlays because, well, they're an automated tool. I mean, in short, automated tools can only detect maybe 25% to 30% of potential accessibility issues. And an actual person has to actually go in and find and fix the majority of issues. And many overlay companies claim that using an overlay is going to keep you from getting sued. And they also, in their terms of service, might state that you have to waive any right to make a claim against them. The other thing is that overlays can cause poor usability, and they can even introduce more accessibility errors into the site. They don't negate the need to remediate the site. That still has to be done. Okay, so I could go on and on, much more, which you might know about, but you can find out more about overlays in the overlays episode, okay? But you can also go and check out the overlay fact sheet website at overlayfactsheet.com and overlaysdon'twork.com. Okay, so now that you know that, let's get into the first piece of news, which has to do with the lawsuit AudioEye versus Adrian Roselli. I covered this in episode 156. But in short, AudioEye sent Adrian several cease and desist letters after he spoke out against their overlay. And then they sued him. Okay, disability rights lawyer Lainey Feingold and Adrian's lawyers and many other people have said this was a SLAP suit, which stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. Now, the lawsuit has made many accessibility advocates and overlay critics afraid to speak out against their findings about overlays. You know, at least naming specific ones. Well, the news is that AudioEye has dropped its lawsuit against Adrian Roselli, which is awesome news. Now, in my opinion, it never should have been a lawsuit in the first place. I see this as free speech with researched and unbiased information to support his statements. I don't see that as defamation, but again, this is just my opinion and I'm not a lawyer. Another positive note in this is that AudioEye is donating $10,000 to the National Federation for the Blind. So this is not just good news for Adrian, it's also good news for accessibility advocates, especially those who've been outspoken against overlays. Now, the other bit of news came as a complete shock to me. Okay, and that is Level Access announced that it plans to buy UserWay for $99 million. Now, I just got done telling you how accessibility advocates have spoken out against overlays over the years, and then this was announced. Why is this so shocking? Well, strangely enough, the enormous amount of money is the least shocking part. Level Access is a reputable accessibility company and leader in the accessibility space. They provide audits, testing, reporting, and other accessibility services. They've been around for 25 years. Okay, and they're in the US, they're in Virginia. UserWay, if you don't know who they are an Israeli accessibility overlay company founded in 2016. And they use AI-based technology with their overlay. They also happen to offer some free and paid automated tools and then manual accessibility audits as well. And as of today, their pricing plans for the overlay, I assume it's their overlay. They're calling it a widget on their website. The pricing is $490 per year for a small website, which is up to 100,000 page views per month. Okay, and then it's $1490 per year for a medium website, which is up to 1 million page views per month. And then they have custom pricing for anything over that. Okay, so back to the story. On December 31st, 2023, Level Access CEO Timothy Springer made an announcement on LinkedIn about buying UserWay. That has been met with an outpouring of comments by people in the accessibility space expressing concerns, skepticism, and confusion. Like I said, I was completely shocked. Okay, I totally understand this. I feel the same way. And that's because back in July 2020, Timothy wrote in his LinkedIn article called "Is It Okay to Use an Accessibility Overlay as a Temporary Solution?" He wrote that using an overlay temporarily, like until the site can be remediated during a redesign, maybe a year or two later, that's not an acceptable approach. And then he goes on to say that's because, quote, the overlay doesn't fix all the issues don't stay fixed, and during the time the patch is in place, the site is actively deploying a separate but equal approach for accessibility. Now, in an article from June 2020 called Lies, Damned Lies, Overlays, and Widgets, he said that using an overlay can be worse than doing nothing. And in an October 2020 article about a lawsuit against a company that used an overlay on their website, at the end of the article, Timothy says, quote, all of this reinforces my recommendations to avoid these solution categories and instead focus on creating and maintaining accessible code to ensure accessible experiences. Well, Timothy responded to some of these comments on his LinkedIn article, and he was saying that he had made those comments back then based on the state of accessibility overlays at that time, which was, again, in 2020. Well, some people are speculating that Level Access is buying Userway for the revenue stream to upsell their clients. Okay, but another point that Timothy makes in the article is, quote, the chief criticism of accessibility overlays relates to marketing claims. Definitely not. The chief criticism has always been that overlays do not work. Now, accessibility advocates have taken a lot of issue over the past few years with the claims that overlay companies make. Sure, some overlay companies say that their tool will fix all issues within, 24 to 48 hours, or that your site will be 100% compliant, for example. Now, I mentioned earlier the overlay fact sheet, which I've signed, and overlaysdon'twork.com. These websites mention a slew of things that have nothing to do with the marketing practices of overlay vendors. Okay, the outcry against the overlays has revolved around the technical aspects of them. I have some thoughts about what I think about this pending deal and what it means for the accessibility industry. I think it makes all overlay companies seem a little bit better. Not to me, okay, but that some people might see it that way. Some people might see it that way. Okay, like they might be thinking, well, if Level Access bought an overlay company, well, overlays can't really be that bad kind of thing, right? And I really don't understand why they just wouldn't build a better tool of some sort or invest that money into something else. I honestly don't see how this will be good for Level Access's reputation, and many others feel the same way. The other thing is that I came across a page on Userway's site comparing Userway to Level Access AMP, which stands for Accessibility Management Platform. Now, I admit I don't know anything about that product at all, okay? But in doing a little bit of research, it seems like maybe it's more of a dashboard and some other tools, okay? But the thing is that Userway is comparing the two on that page, so they must see them, at least in the past, I guess, as a competitor. Okay, that page also claims that Userway has the number one market share at 49%, with Level Access AMP at 0.03%, okay? And after saying this, I just couldn't help but be reminded of the whole Adobe Figma deal, that just got called off after being blocked for pretty much Adobe trying to buy out the competition. Now, I'm not saying that is what is going on at all. I'm just speculating. That's just my opinion. It's not even my opinion. It just reminds me of it, right? It just made me think of that. So anyway, let me know in a comment what you think of this whole deal. And, of course, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And also check out the episodes on AudioEye versus Adrian Rosselli and on overlays. Now, if you're new to having the accessibility conversation with clients, be sure to get the free guide, Understanding and Selling Accessible Websites. You'll find out what you can do right now to help your clients and yourself while making money doing it. You'll find out the types of businesses that need accessibility so that you can target them for potential work. And you'll also find out how to talk about accessibility with clients so that you feel confident when you do it. You can download the guide at creative-boost.com/accessible websites.